What if the wedding ring sitting on your hand right now was never actually made on Earth? What if it traveled across the universe for billions of years, survived an explosion so violent it briefly outshined entire galaxies, and only found its way to your finger because two dead stars smashed into each other long before our planet even existed? It sounds like science fiction. It isn't. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at a single piece of gold the same way again. For thousands of years, every civilization on this planet worshipped gold, fought wars over it, and buried it with their kings. Yet not one of them could answer the most basic question about it. Where did it actually come from? The ancient Egyptians believed gold was the flesh of their gods, something too perfect to belong to the mortal world. The Incas called it the sweat of the sun, a gift dripping down from the heavens. Other cultures across the globe, separated by oceans and centuries, with no contact with one another, all arrived at eerily similar conclusions. That gold did not belong to this earth, that it fell from the sky. For most of human history, that idea was dismissed as primitive superstition, a poetic guess from people who simply didn't understand chemistry. Here's the unsettling part. They were right. In the year 2017, something happened that astronomers had been waiting for their entire careers. Over 100 million light years from Earth, two neutron stars, the collapsed, ultra-dense corpses of once massive suns, finally collided after circling each other for millions of years. For the first time in recorded history, humanity didn't just theorize about where gold comes from. We watched it happen. Telescopes around the world locked onto the event in real time, and scientists realized they were witnessing the birth of gold itself, live as it scattered across space. It was the kind of moment that rewrites textbooks overnight. To understand why this matters, you need to understand something uncomfortable. Earth cannot make gold. Not now, not ever. Our planet is simply not powerful enough. There is no furnace inside this Earth hot enough, no pressure crushing enough, to forge a single atom of gold from scratch. Every single particle of gold that has ever existed on this planet was created somewhere else, long before our sun, our solar system, or our world had even formed. Picture ancient, monstrous stars burning for millions of years before finally running out of fuel and collapsing in on themselves, compressing down into something almost incomprehensible. An object the size of a small city, yet so dense that it weighs more than our entire sun. These are neutron stars. And when two of these collapsed giants finally collide, smashing into each other at a fraction of the speed of light, the universe briefly turns into the most extreme physics lab imaginable. In that instant, unimaginable heat and pressure forge brand new elements out of pure chaos. Gold is one of them. The force of the impact then hurls this newborn gold outward in every direction, flinging it across billions of miles of empty space, where it eventually mixes with dust, gas, and debris, the exact same raw material that later clumps together to form planets, including ours. Sit with that for a second. Every gram of gold buried in every vault, locked in every ring, and melted into every coin is older than Earth itself. The necklace resting against your skin right now is a direct survivor of the death of an ancient cosmic giant. The gold bars, sitting in a bank vault somewhere, were forged in atomic violence billions of years before the first human ever drew breath. That metal simply waited, scattered through the dust of the cosmos for billions of years for something, anything, capable of recognizing its worth to finally show up. Here's a way to actually feel that scale of time. Imagine compressing the entire existence of Earth into a single 8-hour workday. The planet itself would form right as the shift begins. Life wouldn't appear until somewhere around lunchtime. But the gold you're holding, it already existed before the alarm clock even went off that morning. It is older than every mountain range, every ocean, every breath of air on this planet. When you hold a simple gold coin in your palm, you are not holding a product of Earth. You are holding a fragment of an alien visitor, one that crossed unimaginable distances and survived catastrophes that erased entire star systems from existence, just to end up in your pocket. So if gold came from space, how did it end up buried underground, waiting for us to dig it out? The early Earth was nothing like the planet we know today. It was a churning, glowing ocean of molten rock, a hellscape with one brutally simple rule. Heavy things sink, light things rise. Gold happens to be almost 19 times denser than water, so as our planet was still cooling and forming, nearly all of its original gold sank straight down through the molten chaos all the way, to the very center of the Earth, into the core. Scientists have actually calculated what would happen if you somehow pulled all of that gold back up to the surface and spread it evenly across the entire globe. It would form a layer roughly half a meter thick, about knee height on an adult, blanketing every continent and ocean on the planet. Of course, none of us will ever touch that gold. It sits nearly 3,000 kilometers beneath your feet, trapped behind a wall of rock so thick that drilling through it would be like tunneling the distance between two major capital cities. Straight down, through crushing pressure and heat that would liquefy almost anything we know. So if that gold is gone forever, locked away in the planet's molten heart, where did the gold in your phone, your jewelry, your country's reserves actually come from? Around 4 billion years ago, Earth endured something almost too violent to imagine. Astronomers call it the Late Heavy Bombardment, a period when the early solar system was still littered with leftover debris and our planet became a target. This wasn't a gentle sprinkle of space dust. These were asteroids the size of major cities, some weighing millions of tons, slamming into Earth's crust at speeds that defy comprehension. And many of these asteroids were rich with heavy metals, including gold and platinum. When they struck, they didn't bounce off. They detonated. The gold packed inside them vaporized and melted on impact, spraying outward and sinking into the upper layers of Earth's crust and seafloor. This wasn't a single dramatic afternoon either. This relentless cosmic bombardment lasted for roughly 200 million years, an almost unfathomable stretch of time during which Earth was continuously pelted by gold-rich wreckage from space. Every nugget pulled from a riverbed, every vein discovered deep in a modern mine, is a fragment of that ancient alien rain. Which means something. Almost poetic. Human history, every war fought over gold, every empire built on it, every fortune made trading it, has actually been built entirely on top of extraterrestrial debris that crash-landed here long before civilization ever began. Now here's where the story takes a turn nobody expects, because gold isn't just rare, it's strange. Look at almost any other pure metal on the periodic table. Iron, aluminum, silver, platinum, and you'll notice they all share a dull, silvery gray sameness. They behave like mirrors, simply bouncing light back at your eyes exactly as it arrived. Gold refuses to follow that rule. It glows with a warm golden yellow color unlike anything else on the table, and for the longest time, nobody could fully explain why. The answer, strangely enough, comes from Albert Einstein. Einstein's theory of relativity contains one unbreakable law. Nothing in the universe can travel faster than the speed of light, a staggering 300,000 kilometers per second, fast enough to circle the entire planet 7 times in a single second. Now zoom into the center of a single atom of gold. At its core sits an enormously heavy nucleus, and orbiting around it are tiny particles called electrons, racing around at incredible speeds. In lighter elements, like aluminum, those electrons move at a relatively relaxed pace. But gold's nucleus is so massive, so packed with charge, that it grips its electrons with brutal force, yanking them into orbits at roughly 150,000 kilometers per second, half the maximum speed of light in the entire universe. At that velocity, Einstein's relativity stops being theoretical and starts physically reshaping the atom. As objects approach light speed, their mass increases. Gold's electrons effectively gain about 20% more mass purely from how fast they're moving. That extra weight drags them into tighter, more compressed orbits closer to the nucleus, and this microscopic shift completely changes how the atom interacts with sunlight. Ordinary sunlight contains every color of the rainbow. Most metals reflect all of those colors back at once, which is why they look that flat, silvery gray. But gold's compressed, overweight. Electrons absorb the blue, violet, and indigo wavelengths of light, holding onto them, and release only the red, orange, and yellow wavelengths back outward. Blend those 3 remaining colors together, and your eyes interpret it as that unmistakable golden glow. The next time you glance at a gold ring, remember this. That color isn't paint, and it isn't pigment. It's a living, visible demonstration of Einstein's relativity, happening in real time, on your finger, right now. As strange as the physics is, the psychological grip gold has held over humanity might be even stranger and far more dangerous. This metal didn't just bend the rules of light. For centuries, it bent the minds of kings, conquerors, and entire empires, often with devastating consequences. In the 16th century, the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro landed in South America with barely 200 soldiers and managed to capture Atahualpa, the emperor of the vast Inca Empire, through pure deception. Atahualpa understood exactly what these strangers wanted and offered an almost unthinkable ransom for his freedom. He promised to fill the room where he was held captive with gold all the way to the ceiling. That room was roughly the size of a modern apartment with a ceiling height of about 3 meters, tall enough that a grown man would need to stretch his arm fully overhead just to reach the top. Remarkably, the Incas actually delivered. Over 3 months, gold poured in from across the empire. Sacred statues, that fortune brought no lasting joy to the men who stole it. Many of the overloaded gold ships sank during storms crossing the Atlantic, dragging thousands of bricks to the ocean floor forever. Pizarro himself didn't escape gold's curse either. He was A similar story unfolded centuries earlier, on the opposite side of the world. In the 14th century, a West African ruler named Mansa Musa, emperor of the Mali Empire, is often considered the wealthiest individual in recorded human history. His kingdom sat on staggering deposits of gold. In 1324, Mansa Musa set out on a religious pilgrimage to Mecca, and the journey itself became the stuff of legend. His traveling caravan reportedly stretched for miles across the desert, accompanied by tens of thousands of servants and soldiers, many carrying golden staffs alongside a long line of camels hauling sacks loaded with gold dust. Along the way, he stopped in Cairo and, wanting to display his wealth, began spending and gifting gold with reckless generosity, handing it out to merchants, beggars, officials, anyone he encountered. The result wasn't celebration, it was economic devastation. So much gold flooded into Cairo's economy that its value collapsed almost overnight. Prices for basic necessities like bread, meat, and water surged out of control, and the local economy spiraled into crisis. Historical accounts suggest it took over a decade for Egypt's economy to fully recover from one man's well-intentioned generosity. Gold's grip on the human imagination didn't just shape empires, it accidentally shaped science itself. In the 17th century, Europe was gripped by an obsession with alchemy, the desperate, often delusional pursuit of turning cheap, common materials into gold. A German tradesman named Hennig Brand became convinced he'd found the answer in the strangest possible place, human urine. He noticed its yellowish color and became fixated on the idea that it must contain hidden particles of pure gold just waiting to be extracted. Determined, he collected enormous quantities of it, working for days in a foul-smelling basement, boiling and evaporating it down in sealed vats despite the overwhelming stench and grueling conditions. He never got his gold. Instead, after baking the residue with sand in a sealed, airless furnace, a strange white substance formed at the bottom of his container, one, that glowed faintly in the dark with an eerie greenish light and burst into flame the instant it touched open air. Brand had stumbled, completely by accident, onto an entirely new chemical element, phosphorus. He never became wealthy chasing gold, but he made a tidy fortune quietly selling the secret of his glowing discovery to other scientists. 2 centuries later, gold fever crossed the Atlantic and detonated into outright mass hysteria. In the summer of 1897, ships arrived in American ports from Alaska, their crews unloading heavy sacks filled with gold dust pulled from the Klondike River. Newspapers ran the story within days, and almost overnight, around 100,000 ordinary people abandoned their entire lives. Teachers, office workers, doctors, factory laborers, even police officers quit their jobs, sold their homes, took out loans, and rushed north chasing a fortune they'd never seen. To even reach the gold fields, they had to cross the brutal ice-covered Chilkat Pass, and local authorities enforced a harsh requirement. Every single prospector had to carry roughly a full ton of food and supplies just to survive the year ahead. That meant hauling massive packs of flour, sugar, bacon, and tools up a steep frozen incline as tall as a 100-story skyscraper. And because no one could carry a ton at once, most people made that brutal climb 30, even 40 separate times. From a distance, the endless line of prospectors crawling up that icy slope looked like a living chain of ants. Of the 100,000 who set out, only around 30,000 actually made it to the Klondike. And of those, a mere 4,000 ever found any real gold at all. The overwhelming majority lost their savings, their homes, and years of their lives chasing a dream that never paid off, while the real fortunes were quietly made by the merchants selling shovels, warm coats, and basic supplies at the foot of those mountains. After everything, the cosmic violence, the stolen empires, the ruined economies, the frozen mountain passes, here's the number that might shock you most. Humanity has now spent over 6,000 years digging, blasting, and sifting through the earth for this metal, building mines that plunge kilometers underground and processing billions of tons of rock and river sediment in the relentless pursuit of it. And after all that effort across all of recorded history, the total amount of gold ever extracted from the earth weighs roughly 210,000 tons. That number sounds enormous until you realize how physically small it actually is. If you melted down every single gram of gold ever mined, every coin, every ring, every bank vault, every museum artifact on the entire planet, into one solid cube, that cube would measure only about 22 meters on each side. It would comfortably fit inside an average school playground, and stacked upright, it would barely reach the rooftop of a typical 7-story building. On a planetary scale, all of humanity's gold obsession produced something smaller than most city blocks. And here's the strangest part of all. Gold is essentially indestructible. It doesn't rust in water, doesn't corrode in air, and resists nearly every acid known to chemistry. That means almost every single ounce of gold ever mined throughout human history, including gold pulled from the ground in the time of the pharaohs, is most likely still in circulation somewhere on Earth right now, simply melted down and reshaped again and again. The gold inside your phone's circuitry, or sitting inside a tooth filling somewhere, might once have been part of an ancient Egyptian artifact. We keep digging anyway. We tear through forests, carve mining pits the size of entire neighborhoods into the landscape, and burn through staggering amounts of fuel running heavy machinery, all to pull tiny golden flecks from deep underground, refine them, and then lock them right back into the earth, just inside steel vaults instead of rock. Every year it gets harder. The easy deposits near the surface vanished long ago, and miners now descend to depths equivalent to stacking 10 television towers on top of each other, working in brutal heat and constant danger just to keep the supply flowing. So here's the question worth sitting with after everything you just learned. A metal born from the death of stars, buried by Earth's own gravity, raining down from asteroids and shaped into its very color by Einstein's physics, has it actually been worth every empire it destroyed, every life lost chasing it, and every mountain we're still tearing apart to find more of it? Tell me what you think in the comments below, because I'm genuinely curious where you land on this. And if this completely changed the way you think about something as simple as a gold ring, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next story is going to do exactly the same thing to something you've looked at your entire life and never once questioned.